My name is Charlie, and on this channel I make videos about building wealth and achieving financial freedom so that you can free up your time to focus on the things that you truly care about. So this is the 12th episode of my Road to Financial Freedom series, and this is where I document the growth of a small portfolio that I started about 11 months ago, which I'm trying to grow using the strategies that I talk about on this channel, like covered call writing and leaps option buying. So I started the account with a $5,000 deposit, and in addition to that, I'm also depositing $100 every single week. So the goal is to simulate the portfolio of someone working to achieve financial freedom starting from scratch, and to see how quickly it can actually be done. So with all that said, let's see how the portfolio is doing so far. So at the end of October 2021, the portfolio is sitting at a balance of $16,422, and that's based on a total deposited amount of $13,750. So that's a gain of $2,672, or about a 24.2% return, which equates to about a 2% monthly return or a 27% yearly return. So if you'll remember from the last episode, the portfolio was actually down in value at the end of September, but as you can see, we saw a very good recovery during the month of October. And in this episode, we'll get into exactly how that happened, but first let's take a look at the premiums from last month. So we can see that in October, I actually only brought in about $79 worth of premium, which is quite a bit lower than I typically expect, but the main reason for that is just because since my stocks had fallen in value quite a bit during September, I was selling calls further out in time, so most of them didn't expire until November. So even though October was a great month overall, it was a slow month for premiums, and I would expect November to be much better. And just for reference, that $79 is about a 0.55% return as a percentage of my total portfolio. And typically I aim to achieve between 2 to 6% per month in premiums. And one other reason for my slightly lower premiums last month is because on the very last trading day of October, with about 1 hour left of trading, Robinhood actually automatically closed out my poor man's covered call, which I didn't notice until after the trading day was over. So that was a little bit annoying because most brokers don't do that, and I didn't realize that Robinhood was going to, but at least now I know and I can keep an eye out for that going forward. Now they didn't close out my leaps option, they only bought back the short call, so of course as soon as the market opens on November 1st, I can just sell a new short call. But I would have just sold a new one right away if I would have noticed it before the market closed. So I also do plan to switch away from Robinhood. I've kind of just been putting it off because of the hassle of it, but I think I'll go ahead and do it next month after I do my 1-year update on this portfolio. But anyways, let's take a look at the trades that I made last month. So looking at my covered call stocks, I actually don't think that anything has changed there, so I'm still trading CHPT and CRSR. So CRSR really hasn't done much over the last month, but CHPT has started to recover, going from about $19 per share all the way up to about $25 per share. So that's definitely helped me out, although none of my covered calls have expired in the money quite yet. So I still have my 35 strike calls sold against 100 of my shares, and then against my other 100 shares, I plan to sell a $26 strike call as soon as the market opens on November 1st. And then in terms of CRSR, I still have my 37.50 strike call and my 35 strike call, both of which expire on November 19th. So like I mentioned in the last episode, I plan to just wait and see how each of their earnings reports go before I decide what to do with them going forward. And CRSR's earnings report is actually tomorrow on November 2nd after the market closes, while CHPT's isn't until November 30th. So in the next episode, I should have an update on CRSR and potentially on CHPT depending on what it does from now until then. But if I do get my shares called away from this 26 strike call, I probably won't buy those back because I'll still have the additional 120 shares. Instead, I'll just use that capital to open up another trade, which will probably be a poor man's covered call, although I'm not quite sure on which stock yet. Like I've mentioned in some other videos, I do really like Apple right now, but I'm not sure if I'll be able to afford a poor man's covered call. I'll just have to see how my portfolio looks at that time once I actually get rid of my CHPT shares. Now taking a look at my poor man's covered call, this is another big reason that this portfolio has done so well over the last month, because AMD has also recovered pretty strongly, going from down around $100 per share all the way up to above $120 per share. So last Friday, Robinhood automatically bought back my 121 strike call, and when the market opens on November 1st, I plan to sell this November 5th 124 strike call, which at the time will just be 1 week out. And if AMD does continue to rise and exceed my 124 strike price by November 5th, with, I probably will go ahead and just open up a new poor man's covered call on AMD right away. Because last week they came out with another outstanding earnings report showing very significant growth quarter over quarter and especially year over year. And I would expect the fourth quarter to be another pretty good quarter, as it typically tends to be since it is the holiday season. So for that reason, I do expect AMD to rise from now until that next earnings report. Now looking at my Leaps options, I'm still holding my initial Delta 40 Nike Leaps option, but when Nike dipped a couple weeks ago, I actually doubled down on that and bought another Delta 24 Leaps option, which cost me $790 to buy. So currently that Leaps option is slightly up in value, and it hasn't quite offset the losses from the first Leaps option, but I think that Nike should do very well over the next couple of months, and eventually I should be profitable overall on both of these options. But once the second Leaps option reaches a profit of around $200, I'll probably just go ahead and sell that one and hold on to the initial one. Or maybe since the second one actually expires further out in time, I'll just sell this first one, and if I take a slight loss on it, that'll be okay because I can use it to offset my gains for tax purposes. And then when it comes to my long-term holds, I don't think I've made any new trades since the last episode, so I'm up about $344 on those overall. But what I do think I'm going to do going forward is something that I'm doing in my main portfolio, which is basically selling off all of my individual stocks and just buying index funds for my long-term holds. The reason for that is just that it's easier to manage, and in reality, it's pretty hard to beat the market just by buying and holding individual stocks. So I'm okay with just holding index funds and achieving returns in line with the overall market. So the index funds that I like to buy are VTI, which is a total market index fund, VOO, which is an S&P 500 index fund, QQQ, which is a NASDAQ index fund, and DIA, which is a Dow Jones Industrial Average index fund. That way I've got some pretty decent diversification across all sectors of the market. But before I go ahead and sell these and buy the index funds, I plan to wait until I've been holding these for at least a year, so that way my gains are taxed at the long-term capital gains tax rate rather than at my ordinary income tax rate. And as I've mentioned in previous episodes, I was thinking I'd start selling some naked calls once my portfolio hits around $15,000, and of course we are over that number, so I think this month I'll set up my first naked call. Now I haven't put much thought yet into which stock I'm going to do it on and how I'm going to set it up, but for updates on that, be sure to follow me on Instagram where I post weekly updates on this portfolio, or check me out on Patreon where you can get access to the portfolio in real time. And speaking of Patreon, over there you can also get the ability to get notifications whenever I make a trade, and that's done using the Iris app. And I recently found out that I'm one of the top traders on there, so joining over there would be a great way for you to get a feel for the trades that I like to make as someone who lives primarily off of my income from my stock portfolio. So even if you're just starting out, I think you'll find some value there, but even if you can't or don't want to join on Patreon, I recently made a video where I walked through 3 of my most recent trades, explaining my entire thought process along the way. So if you haven't seen it yet, be sure to check that video out in the bottom right corner of the screen. Otherwise, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll talk to you all in the next one.